Hey guys, Tepcocyclerepair. Today working on a Powerhorse. This is a 4500 inverter generator. This is the same as the Predator 3500. If you look at the pictures and everything's the same. I guess it has a different inverter in here. So we're going to take this one apart. It's been sitting for a while. It starts on with the choke on, but it doesn't continue to run when you take it off. So most likely it's going to be the pilot jet. We're going to pull the carburetor, clean it, get it running again, and get it back to the customer. So let's go ahead and pull the side cover off. It's real simple. It's just two Phillips heads there, and then you can take your this is where your oil fill is, and the carburetor and everything is inside behind this. Your air box is right here, and this is your serviceable side. You take this off here if you're going to do your check your oil right there, and then you can see this line coming down. This is the overflow for the carburetor. Everything's behind here. Let's get this cover off. All right, and there we go. So there's the carburetor right there, and air box right there. Somebody's been in here. All right, so to get this out, we're going to go ahead and take the air box out. There's a 10mm mount right down at the bottom right here. We're going to take that off, take the cover off, take the air filter out. There's just a latch on the bottom. Take the air filter cover off. Hang on, I'm going to get them out of the hand. Alright, so with that out of there, we're going to have our 10mm right here and another one that's right back in. See if you can see it right in there. See that? You can get it right from underneath this metal plate right there. So I'm going to take that out, get this air box out of the way. Alright, so with those two off, that one in there, and the one in the back right here, this whole box is about to come off. You have a breather, case breather right here. It's going to be holding on a little bit. So just work that off and then pull it out. Alright, so here's the cover, and it just slid right off of the valve cover where it slides on there, easier than pulling it off the plastic housing. So we're going to move this aside. Alright, so now we're at the carburetor here. We have our linkage. Okay, so this is our run linkage right here. So when I move the, if you watch that, when I move the, it's our choke. So I'm going to put it on choke right there. And I'm just turning this dial right over here. Alright, so there's choke. And there's the run. So that's easy to come off. You pull the spring back and just pull this tab up through the top. There's a slit in the top right there. So with the spring back, that'll come off. Now, I'm going to show you what we're trying to get at. Right down in there, there's a plastic. You see the screw for the idle? Right below that is our pilot jet, and that's what we're trying to get to. So that's why we got to get the carburetor out to get to it, because you can't really get to it any other way. It's kind of back behind there. So the throttle is a plug, it's not a cable. So when we get this this out, we'll pull the carburetor out a little bit and unplug it from the throttle control. It's up on the top. So I'm working this plate off right here, and you can see there's a pin right inside there, and it goes inside the choke. So when you're putting this back together, pay attention to that. When I'm working this off and being gentle to get it off all the way, and then make sure the pin slides out of there. And you see the pin is at the other end of this arm right there. See it? So just gotta make sure you pull this out nice and even, and then pull the lever off the top. So I'll show you here, just like that, and then pull it up. Okay, and then here we are, the choke off. You can move this out of the way. You can actually leave the spring on if you wanted to. I like to be able to just move this and not have to worry about it. So that's why I took the spring off. All right, so now let's get here. We have our fuel line, which is attached right here. All right, fuel line, and then we'll just work the carburetor off. I'm going to pinch these the little clamp right there and slide that off and get that fuel line off. All right, so these angle pliers work really good for that because it's kind of behind. I took the clamp off by hand just with my fingers, and then grab the hose and just rotate the hose back and forth so it moves, and then just gently pull it off. I'm not squeezing it really hard. I'm just pushing it just enough to grab it. All right, you can see our fuel's dumping out, so let me clamp that off. I'll put another clamp on there and shut that off. All right, so you got to have this on off. This is a fuel valve. One thing that I don't really like about these is you can't cut the fuel off and let it run out. I like to be able to cut my fuel off and let it run all the way out of gas. You can't do that in these. You have to shut it off. So if you're going to be, when you turn it off to here, it cuts the fuel off as well as the ignition. So when you do that, make sure that you come back to your carburetor, pull the side cover off, and you unscrew this screw right here, and that'll drain what's in the bowl out. But you can see that fuel valve is leaking because it's still dripping, and you don't want this thing to drip constantly when it's off because it's just going to fill the carburetor with fuel. So I'm going to pinch that off and we'll move on. All right, so here I got the carburetor off. If you follow that line around, that connects to your throttle control. It goes all the way down, and it goes right here to this plug. So we're going to pull this plug off and get it out. I recommend that you leave this on unless you mess with them. That little spring right there, it's kind of a pain to set it all back up again. If you haven't done it, it's not a big deal. If you don't lose that spring getting shot across the room and you have some patience, get it back together. But we're going to leave that connected. I'm just going to unplug it. So right behind the hose right here, we have a clamp that the wire runs through. So get underneath that with a tool and pry it up. You probably use a screwdriver. I have a tool that's made for it. Get underneath there and pop it up. And there's little locking tabs that go inside there. So just kind of be gentle. They're probably going to bend all the way, but you can get it back in. All right, so there we go with it out of there. So let's get this over to the bench and get it cleaned up. All right, so with the carb on the bench here, we're just going to start taking it apart. And the pilot jet that we got to get to is right here. So what we're going to do is we're going to take a screwdriver, put it in here in the idle, and we're going to count how many turns in. Half, 1, half, 2, half, 3, 3 1/4, and then we got to take it out. And that's our idle adjustment, okay? So 3 1/4 there. We're going to take that all the way out, get that out of the way, because we got to get this out. Now this right here is just pressed in there, and the flange that's on the idle screw holds it in. So we got to take it out as an O-ring on there, so be careful with it. But look, see, it's just loose. Nice and easy. Pull it up. All right, and we're out. And the jet is in the bottom of that. That's the pilot jet. You got to make sure that you can get, cleaner, brake cleaner through there, carb cleaner through that hole. That's the pilot jet. That's what affects the idling. So I'm out of cleaning tools. So here, let me get one of these. Oh. All right, so now with this, I have my little cleaning tool. Put it in there. There we go. And it was clogged. It didn't go all the way through. Now we're going all the way through. It's probably hard to see right there, but I can get that all the way through. So I'm going to spin this a couple times, get some cleaner. All right, that's good. I'm going to put that aside. Make sure you put some grease and something on that O-ring when you put it back in. I use that Seal Glide stuff. Now pay attention to the direction of where your drain is right here, because we want to make sure that that's in the same place so you can get to it in the winter times when it's time to drain this out. So it's right lined up here with the side of the carburetor. So let's take this bolt out here. All right, that doesn't look good in there. All right, look at that. Eesh. So we're going to clean out everything inside here. We're going to pull our float needle out. Pull our float with our needle on there. We're going to clean that in there. Clean that on. There's a jet inside there. See it in there? We're going to get that out. Clean that out. Make sure that's all clean. I see some signs of water in there. So let me get this all cleaned up, and I'll be right back. All right, so let's get this jet out of here. All right, so we have our jet and our emulsion tube, okay, right here. We want to make sure all these holes are cleaned out in there. There's a bunch of little holes. That just helps it run better, helps atomize the fuel when it goes up into the combustion chamber, so that helps it run. If those are clogged up, it'll tend to act rich, because the fuel will just be getting dumped in there instead of being atomized like it should. So we're going to clean this here. Each one of these holes. I'm using that same piece of wire from the brick brush. All right, so let me go brush this off and spray it with some carb clean. All right, so my jets are cleaned over there. Float needle's clean. I'm going to clean the needle seat. Make sure you do this. I'm going to be using a little bit of valve grinding compound. I'm using the Clover compound. It's just fine compound. You can use semi-chrome if you have that for jewelry. Just something to get in here and polish it. You can put this on a drill. Usually they don't need that much cleaning, so. All right, now when that's clean, I'm going to go ahead and spray that out with some cleaner. Remember, we left this on because I'm showing you guys you can do it with this electronics on here. So make sure you don't spray the electronics with cleaner or anything. Keep them dry. All right, so with that all sprayed out of there, we're going to make sure that we have everything inside the pilot jet clean. So we're going to spray through there as well. Be careful about this gasket. Okay, you see it's starting to get a little crazy on me there. We got to pay attention to that because if you spray this a lot with carb cleaner, it's going to start to swell. I got another video on how to make those back to normal size. So I'm going to spray some cleaner inside of here. All right, now this is a mixture screw right here, but it's a one way. They don't want you to touch it to adjust it. Some of them have a cap on it that has an adjustment on it, so you can only turn it a little bit. You can put a slot in that if you want to. Take a Dremel, if you have a Dremel, and cut a little slot. It kind of sticks out just enough where you can probably put a Dremel and make it a flat slot in there and adjust it. But most of the time you get these cleaned all up, they'll be fine. So we're going to put it back together again. We have our emulsion tube, and the emulsion tube drops in, okay, with the tapered part there. The tapered concave section goes in first, and then the jet with the flathead part sticking outward, so you can tighten it back in. Okay, don't over tighten it, just snug it up. And you can see it sticking through there, the emulsion tube. All right, then we're going to take our float and our float needle, put it back inside of there. Our pivot pin. Trying to stop that gasket from, that O-ring from swelling before I put the bowl back on. All right, now bowl that we cleaned up. See, it's starting to swell. Just tuck it in there. It'll be fine. Okay, there we go. Holding it in place with my thumb, put the bottom bolt on. Now this whole thing here, I haven't bought anything new. There's no new parts in here. I just went ahead and used what was on there. If you have any leaks coming out of anywhere, you may have to replace, say, that O-ring right there that we just worked on getting it back into place. There's a couple things in there that, you know, that can go wrong and cause a leak. So make sure you pay attention to those. All right, make sure the bowl is sitting where it's supposed to sit now. We're looking at where we had it, which was right there. Snug that in. Good. Now we got to put our pilot back in, and this is important. Okay, this is the one that won't let it idle. So we're going to go ahead and take some grease, and I like to use either a Super Lube or a Seal Glide, something like this, the original Seal Glide, or the Napa stuff I use in a lot of other videos. My son is borrowing that one right now, so I'm going to use what I have left in this one. You only need a tiny bit. You don't want to mess these O-rings up, and that's the key here. Let's get it on those O-rings right there. And there's another one right here on the top. All right, so O-ring there and O-ring there. So now we're going to take that and slide it back in. It has flat sides on it, so it goes in a certain way. It's back in. Let's put our idle back in. get that, remember, screwed all the way in, and then back it out to whatever your setting was on yours. Okay, so right there, back in place. All right, so that carburetor is done. This is going to work just fine. I'm going to go throw it back in and we'll fire it up. Now, I might make a slot in there if my Dremel tool can get past that, if it's deep enough to put a little groove in there. But if you're going to do that, make sure that you cover everything off so you don't get any crap in there. I got the bowl back on. I would cover this side here if I was going to do that. I'm just going to leave it. It should be fine. All right, let me go throw it back on. Now guys, while I was doing the carburetor, I dumped all the fuel out because I've told you several times, if you watch any of my videos, never trust the fuel that comes in here. Even if they say it's fresh and they just put it in, always dump it out, because if there's water in the bottom of the tank, they're not going to know that. If they used an old can, there might be water in that can, so make sure you change that out. It's all back together. I'm going to do oil change while I'm at it to make sure no gas got in there. All right, so it's all done. This is my buddy Scott. Scott, let's see if it works. Choke is on. Typical Honda. This thing is running weird, and let me show you what's going on. You may have the same problem. Alright, check it out. We got exhaust coming out of the intake. Yeah, buddy. What does that mean? Alright guys, so don't panic. This happens sometimes. You fix your carburetor, you know you did a good job because you're thorough with it, and you've been watching a bunch of my carb rebuild videos, so you know you did the right thing and the carburetor's back in. It should start and run fine. If it doesn't, start looking at other things. So, I'm thinking this exhaust here might have something to do with it. It doesn't look like there's much room for the exhaust to get out. Let's take it off. Alright guys, so there were two, what size are these things? 9/32 bolts on there. Pull this off. Look at that. No exhaust is going to get through there like that. Look. You got to clean this out. Okay, this is exhaust trying to get out of here. That's why it was blown out of the intake. It needed somewhere to go. So let's just try to fire it up now. All right, so before we go here, guys, let's talk about why this could have happened. So here we have some fiber packing from the exhaust. It looks like it was coming loose. It completely clogged the screen for the spark arrestor in the exhaust, and it also clogged this piece here. Now this is like the plug that goes in the end. I don't know why they have a spark arrestor and this. I really don't think you need this. If you have a spark arrestor, it'll be fine. This thing is just completely clogged. You can't even really see barely any light, even after I cleaned it some. So I could soak it in some kerosene and try to free it up, but I don't think this is needed. I'm probably not going to put it back on. I'll just leave the regular spark arrestor that looks like this, and this was completely clogged with that filter material there, and you couldn't even breathe. So I'm going to put this one back on here, and then we should be good to go. Shouldn't have any more problems. I'm going to leave this one out. I'll soak it, and I'll let the owner decide if he wants to put that back in, but I think it's good just with this right here, and it shouldn't have any problems at all. But sometimes what can happen is, in any exhaust that has a spark arrestor like this, you can have a rich running system, and soon, this case, really what was happening is this was breaking loose, starting to clog this up, causing it to run rich because it couldn't have a free-flowing exhaust. And then it just built up more and more carbon and it had a problem. So I'm going to let this one run outside before I put any of this stuff back in for a while and make sure it's blown all what it needs to out of there. And then we'll be good. But I'm just going to put this one back in. All right, so now that we found that exhaust, and that's another good clue, okay? The exhaust got to get out somewhere. And if it's coming out of your intake, it's got to go. It's either a bad valve, or the exhaust can't get out and it goes out somewhere. So as soon as that intake valve opens up, it starts blowing it out that way. I'm surprised it ran at all. But let's set you guys up right here and see if it starts now. Choke. Oh yeah. Perfect. See what I'm saying, guys? You got to look at everything else too. So sometimes these things will come to me, and you know it's sat for a while, and you assume it's a carburetor because it's sat, which is a good assumption. It's a normal problem that these things have. But as soon as you clean that carb, you know you did it right, and it's still not running. We looked at the exhaust, and that exhaust was clogged up. All right, guys. So that's all there is to it. Maintenance, maintenance, maintenance. Make sure you change your oil. We run these things sometimes for days at a time. If you have a power outage or if you're using it for camping, it builds up carbon. That's a maintenance item to pull that. That's why it's got 2 bolts on it, so you can take it off. Take it off, clean it out every once in a while, and make sure your generator stays running good for when you need it. Hopefully you like this video, guys. Please hit the like button, subscribe, hit the bell for further notifications. Until next time, Tepcocyclerepair. Purring like a kitten.